Greetings, everyone. So good to see you. So in a few moments, I will give a talk. It's part 2 of coming out of the story into the land of gratitude. Who knew? Who knew? Some do. Coming out of that story of suffering and into a land of gratitude that's right there waiting to meet you. At the end of my talk, I will be asking you, what are some ways in which gratitude expresses itself? Where does it appear in your life? And also, do you have something to share with us, like a poem, a piece of art, a song, something that expresses gratitude? You know, we're heading into this Thanksgiving season. And so I thought this was very relevant to the season. So we'll be spending some time in community sharing what gratitude means to us and maybe expressing some of it through things we can share. Great. It's story time, my friends. It's story time. Okay, here we go. I chose a story called Vasalisa, the Beautiful. Ready? It's the cover. Vasalisa the Beautiful, or the Fair, depending upon what version of the story you get. Once upon a time, in a certain kingdom, there lived a merchant. He had been married for 12 years and had but one daughter, Vasilisa the Beautiful. When the child was 8 years old, her mother died. But before her mother died, the mother summoned her daughter to her deathbed, took a doll from beneath the covers, the wooden doll, and gave it to her and said, "Listen, Vasilisa, remember my words and do what I say. I am dying. I leave you with my motherly blessing and this doll. Keep it close always and show it to no one. If misfortune befalls you, give the doll something to eat and ask its advice. She will eat and then tell you what to do." The mother embraced her daughter and died. Now, how many are disappointed not to hear the rest of the story? Give me a few hands. Yes. Oh my goodness, what happens to poor Vasilisa? She's going to have so many hardships, right? Something's going to happen where she has to have this doll to help her through. This doll, what does it mean to feed a wooden doll? Is it like cultivating awareness? Like if you're in trouble, cultivate awareness maybe, and then you will be told? Ah, poor Vasilisa. She comes in contact with the crone Baba Yaga, whose place is surrounded by skulls. Vasilisa goes there for the light. And after many trials and having the doll help her, the old crone awards her with a skull filled with light that she can carry home and light her life. Interesting story, huh? There's more to it than that. But notice the story. Isn't it interesting how we're drawn? We love stories, don't we? As a child, tell me another story. I want to write a story. Mom, let me write the story. I'll tell you the story. And all the goblins and the witches and everything. Because we're so fascinated by stories. So that's no problem, right? That's no problem. The problem is the story of I. Here it is again, the story of I. This is volume 81,383. Sounds like one of those Buddhist lists of things, of afflictions and so on. Actually, you might notice this code here. So the story of I arises for all of us. Is that a problem? Is that a problem? Only if it causes suffering. And then we look closely at it. Does it cause suffering, disappointment, self-doubt, aversion, ill will, just to name a few things? Okay, so last time I did part one of this talk and went into some detail about the story of I, and I played a clip of Joel speaking on this subject. And so I dipped into the audio archives one more time, and I landed on a talk that Joel gave nearly 20 years ago, called What's the Story on Stories? And this is something that you can look up on the archive page, the center's webpage, and listen to the whole thing. But I wanted Tom to play a little excerpt for us from What's the Story on Stories, recorded July 14th, 2002.
We have an idea of who we are, and that will vary from individual to individual and from culture to culture, and vary considerably, but we each have an idea of who we are, some entity, some ego, some being, some self, some soul, some spirit, or something like that, that exists in this framework of time, that was born in the past, some how many years ago, you're keeping track, that is here showing up now in the present, and that will hopefully have some years left in which to experience things. And the plot of the story, it's a plot that's conceived of in terms of what I want, what I desire, what I want to do with my life, what I want to achieve, how can I be happy, all those sorts of questions. And it's an ongoing plot. It's a soap opera. It continues episode after episode after episode. So at the center of our lives here is this story, the story of I, the story of who we are. So then, what is the problem with this story? What's the big deal? What mystics say is there is only one problem. Only one problem. Not that there is a story, but that we become so fascinated with the story, we lose track of the fact that it is a fiction. And that, in a nutshell, is the cause of all our suffering.
So Joel says there's only one problem, not that there is a story, but that we become so fascinated with our story, just like Vasilisa, what shall happen to her? We lose track of the fact that it is a fiction, just like these fairy tales, the Russian fairy tale book. It's a fiction. Now, my friends, when you truly hear this, when it permeates your mind, your heart, your soul, when you really receive that message, you will meet gratitude in a land that awaits you. That's why I will steer this talk toward gratitude. Only when you see it for yourself can you see through it and see that it is fiction. And when that happens, you have the freedom to no longer believe in it, to believe that it's true, something that you have to stay chained to. You see it as a marvelous work of imagination. That's where it's springing from, this creative place, the imagination. You see it as a marvel, as a miracle created from consciousness itself. So let me ask myself a question. Is the story of I still arising for me? Yes. There it is, like music playing. I can see that. I have a very creative imagination playing. Yeah, I see it here. Now, is this a problem? No. Okay, how about now a story comes up? Oh, I'm mad. I'm angry about something. The thing is, in my experience, um, when a story arises, it's lit up as though it's on a stage and there's spotlights, floodlights, the whole thing is lit up. I always use this example. I'm talk to my brother. Now I'm angry. Here comes, I'm angry what he said. And as it's lit up with spotlights, I see it in awareness, it releases and goes. So I remember questioning Joel about this in the early days. I said, Joel, don't you feel these things? Don't these things arise? And he said, yes, but there's nothing for them to stick to. Arise and go. Impermanence, arise and go. No problem. Because I know, oh, this is a story. I don't have to believe in anger toward my brother. It's just their energy arising, and now it's gone. So usually, it's within a day, it's gone. And so I've noticed this for quite some time now. Oh, here comes something, and it's gone. It is not who I am. These stories, that's not who I am. But I must say that before I was able to see through the fiction of my own story, my story would multiply. It would take root. It would grow a garden. And in that garden, I would have all these flowers, or maybe thistles or something like that, blackberry bushes without any fruit, but only thistles of anger and scorn and ill will, betrayal, this sort of thing. That would be my garden. So my experience is that if you plant your garden with seeds of ill will, you will grow revenge, deceit, laying in wait for somebody to fail at something. Oh, good, they deserve that. All of those things. So when you feed that story, you believe it's true, then you grow a garden of ill will. But plant your garden with awareness, the light of awareness, which actually is a neutral light, and you will grow what? Magnificent roses of gratitude. I'm from Iowa. Tall corn stalks of steady devotion, hollyhocks of loving service. All of this will spring forth from your garden of delight. Shall I go on? What does your garden grow? Sometimes, as a spiritual practitioner, the story might arise. But if I am not entranced by a story, if I am actually no self, isn't that dull? Isn't no self really dull? Just like an old worn out paper bag or something empty and useless. What good is that? Doesn't our passion and drive come from our stories? But my friends, this is my experience, the juicy part of being alive, of no self, of gratitude is lost. It's lost. That juicy part is lost when we reside in a story of suffering, the story of I. We lose the good stuff. And as Gangaji, modern mystic who lives right down here in Ashland, Oregon, says, that story leads to war. That belief in separate self causes conflict within, war within, always fighting, always spinning around with ourselves and our thoughts, and projects war into the whole world that's arising in consciousness. She says it's a great tragedy, this belief in the separate self that creates war for us internally and externally. So I wanted to tell you that last year, about this time, it was actually leading up to that great big election period. I was starting to feel a little bit toxic, or in my system, toxified by my daily doses of news stories, stories of conflict and people arguing and fighting and all of these things. And I thought, oh, I just need to withdraw from this addiction that I'm seeing here, grasping for news, who's right, who's wrong, and so on. So I decided to devise a no story retreat for myself, only for me at home. So it's a no story retreat. And on the night that I began the retreat at home, I handed over my iPhone to Nirija. I said, take it away from me. Check it for me once a day. Now, only interrupt me if this happens, or this happens. I gave her a list. If these things happen, then you can interrupt me. Otherwise, don't interrupt me. So there I was at home, and I watched no TV. Now that didn't mean Nirija didn't watch TV. She wasn't on my retreat, so she was watching TV. When the news time came, I went downstairs to the guest room, and I sat there and noticed what was around me. I didn't do very stern practices. I just sat in awareness and began to notice what was around me through all the sensations of the body. So I noticed things that have been sitting there for a long time and hadn't paid much attention to. And so I wanted to show you one of them. Here's one. Well, this was sitting on the shelf. This is a turn of the century stereoscope. You know, in the days before people had TVs and even radios, and you know, no one had, hardly anybody had a camera. This is what you used to get a 3D effect. A little picture here, you look through there. Oh no, there's some people in Switzerland, they're climbing up an iceberg on ladders. Wow. Now you might say, well, doesn't that give rise to stories? Didn't you spin stories? Actually, I didn't. I just really marveled at this construction. I held it in my hand. I felt the wood of it and just thought, oh, look at what's around me that I miss because I'm feeding myself constantly with news stories. I also did not read novels. I didn't want to give rise to stories. I did read some types of poetry, not story poems, but other kinds of poetry. I will say that before I got into the retreat, I was worried that I'd go through withdrawal, that I would feel a real urge, like, where's my phone? I need my phone. I want to look up a word. I have a question. I have to ask this question. And so I thought, oh no, it's going to be really hard. I'll have to go through withdrawal and sit with that. But guess what? There was no withdrawal. I was so surprised. I just felt calm. Nothing happened. No big deal happened. The calm mind was there, just waiting for me. So there was no agitation. Nirija would go out of the house to do something. I did not go, oh, I can turn on the TV, or where's my phone? I'll find it real quick. It didn't happen. Only before the retreat did I think this might happen. I spun a couple of stories there. So 7 days went by, 7 full days of no story. The hardest part for me that I hadn't really thought about was that Nirja and I would be in silence with each other, and that includes not looking at each other. So for 7 days we were like passing, each other, and but we did it. And then it ended. My 7 days ended, and I felt very, very grounded. I felt a little bit more purified, and turned on the election. There it was. So, it's at our fingertips, these practices, and many of us here have been on long retreats. And, sometimes you just to create your own retreat at home. For me, it was a no story retreat. You may think of it a little bit differently, but my advice for you, if you do want to try something like this, is to make it very well defined. Like, when will I start and when will I end? What can I do on a retreat like this? Now, for me, I read poetry. I walked every day silently outside. I also raked some leaves, so mindfully raking leaves, this sort of thing. So make a list of what you can do and what you will not do. I will not check my iPhone. I will not turn on the TV or whatever it is. And you might just try it whenever you feel that need. Um, and if you're in that retreat and you notice stories arising trying to carry you away, don't wrestle with the stories. Don't chew on the stories. Just watch them and watch them self-liberate, which is what we cultivate in meditation practice, to watch the mind, to see the story and let it self-liberate. So when this happens, I'm suggesting to you that you will be met by the land of gratitude. And so I wanted to, give you another, let me just check the time, another clip. Let me see. Yeah, another clip of Joel on the subject of gratitude. Now, this one is from 25 years ago, 1996. I look out here and I see, there's Sherry and Wesley, Mike and Sheila, Deanna. We were there. We were all there back in those days. Bev, there's Bev over there. Todd, we were there in 1996. And you can find this audio, by the way, it's pretty on the top of the audio list under the 7 virtues. So if you check your little booklet here on the way of selflessness, you will find to reflect on 7 virtues, which are courage, humility, justice, patience, gratitude, mercy, and joy. I'm trying to say Joel, joy. And each talk is just magnificent. So in this talk, Joel talks about cultivating a gratitude practice, and that's something that we did back then. We did so many practices. And first he says to look around and to begin to realize that everything is a gift.
So gratitude begins with the understanding that in reality, everything is a gift. Everything is a grace. We may have, as a social fiction, and a necessary, by the way, social fiction, concepts of ownership and so forth. They're the rules by which we play the social game. But in reality, fundamentally, we don't own anything. We don't deserve anything. Everything is a gift.
Everything is a gift. Everything is a gift. In 1996, I needed to hear that. Everything is a gift. But you can't know that if you're wrapped up in the story of I, which says, I deserve this. This belongs to me. I'm entitled to this. The universe is not giving me what I deserve. That's been my hard one. Come on, universe, give me what I deserve. When we're wrapped up in that story of I, we cannot easily recognize everything as a gift. So spaciousness is very definitely needed in order to realize that. So during that session, if you listen into it, you'll hear that Joel calls out to us and says, see that light switch over there? Turn that on and off. So somebody got up and turned it on and off. He said, look at light at our fingertips. We take for granted. And then he said, look at the thermostat here. We can have heat, we can have it cooler. At our fingertips. Where's our gratitude? So you can cultivate gratitude by becoming very present. What's around you? For what does your gratitude arise? You might say, what about the harsh things in life? How can I have gratitude for that? Harsh things happen. Illnesses, old age, death, unfair people, unkind people. When you're wrapped up in the story of I, it's hard to have any spaciousness around that. It's hard not to grow your own garden of ill will. But when you dwell in awareness, the urge is different. With compassion, you look upon what is harsh, seems harsh, and you are drawn forward. How may I help? How may I serve? How may my open heart be of service in this situation that is so harsh and painful? By the way, I like to bring up that often when I talk to people about, let's say, a diagnosis they've had, and it's a shock. This has come up, and then they might tell me later, it turned out to be a gift in my life. I said, how could it be a gift? We went through all of this chemo, and because it opened their hearts. A very good friend of mine was diagnosed with ALS. She lasted 2 years. She did not want to die. She wanted to stay alive. But during those 2 years, she was of service. She became the director of this Facebook page for people with ALS and their families. She put all that she could, all of her energy, into being of service to the very last moment, ultimately accepting her life as it was. So recently I was listening to Adyashanti, who's also a modern mystic, lives in California. And he was talking about self-giving. I said, I wonder, what if we rename Thanksgiving self-giving? Wouldn't that be something? Self-giving. And the first time I heard him say it, I thought, is he talking about giving to yourself? Like I should go on Amazon and buy myself some presents? Self-giving? But no, of course not. He said, quote, it's what you give your attention to. Your attention is something of great value. Considering offering your attention as a gift to the ground of your being. Offer your attention as a gift to the ground of your being. Give your attention to the unknown. In a quote, he says, to give yourself to a moment is no small thing. Self-giving is the condition of reality. Life itself, a moment of life. Life is an extravagant process of self-giving. This giving and receiving is like breathing. You give yourself to the moment, and all of time and space gives itself to you. Billions of years arise, Adyashanti said, as one single moment, fully given, totally. As you give yourself to it, it gives itself to you, because it's one giving, it's one act. It is where giving is the receiving, and the receiving is the giving. So I find that quite beautiful, to give your attention to the unknown. So I'm someone who, gratitude arose for me early in childhood. I went to the Methodist Church and got certain concepts of God and so on. And as a child, for some strange reason, nobody told me to do this, but as a child, I cultivated a practice of gratitude. I would say, thank you, God for everything. I would chant this silently, by the way. Thank you, God for everything. Thank you, God for everything. as a child. I mean, under age 9, definitely. And I would lie in bed and watch my breath, breathing in, breathing out, and matching the words to the breath, I would say, "Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for everything." Now, this chant lived within me for many, many years. But when the story of I fell away into this music playing underneath, so too fell away that concept of God that I was praying to. So when the story of I fell away, so too did my concept of God fall away. So I could no longer say, "Thank you, God." And in fact, when I tried to say it, I couldn't even say, "Thank you," because there was no longer something out there to thank. Gratitude just arose. Gratitude for the unknown. What you could it be that you thank? Yes, of course, in everyday life, I'll say thank you. Thank you for this. Thank you for that. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Joel. But ultimately, who is there to thank? But radiant gratitude is expressed through this vessel. And I want to suggest to you that when that realization happens, that the story of I is seen through, gratitude will meet you. Instead of it arising, like in time and space, arising this way, it's there to meet you. Already there, always there. Now, you may call that by a different name, and that's okay. You may call it happiness. Oh, yeah, I met it, but that was happiness. That wasn't gratitude. Or I met it, and it was love. I met it, and it was compassion. I met it, and it was peace. It doesn't matter, really what we call it, but that we meet it. And it's so funny, Nirja came into my studio to help me set up today and found a scrap of paper on the floor. And it was a quote from Ruth Denison that I had handwritten, many years ago. And it said, "You can miss it." Oh, when she said that during her talk, you either meet it or you miss it. That startled me. Oh no, I don't want to miss it. And there it was, a scrap of paper. "You can miss it," she said. So we'll call it gratitude. This energy I'm saying that is met when the story of I falls away, let's call it gratitude for now. And I would like to try a chat poetry with you again. So let me bring up my chat. So some of you have done this with me before. Chat poetry means that I give a lead in, and then you all respond on your chat screen if you can find your way to it in answering the question. And then I will read the responses back as a poem. Sound good? I may try to get some music behind it, but if not, we'll just do it without the music. So here's the lead in I'd like you to try, and then just go ahead and type into the chat your response so that I can read it. Okay? So the lead in is, gratitude appears in my life for. So here's our poem. Gratitude appears in my life for a moment here and a moment there. Gratitude appears in my life for changing seasons, for family, for the explosion that is this moment, for opportunity. Gratitude appears in my life for teachers I thought were enemies, for the path. Gratitude appears in my life for colors, for shelter and warmth. Gratitude appears in my life for being. Let's get more specific. Let's get into nitty-gritties, okay? Light switches, thermostats. Gratitude appears in my life for every moment. For the sunshine and nature all around me, for the warmth of family and friends. Oh, gratitude arises for my troubles, for my salvation, for the wonderment of noticing. For difficult people, thank you. For everything, gratitude for everything. For friends, the great mystery that gives itself up moment to moment. Experiences, everything. Gratitude appears in my life for something and shine love on every being. For the trees, for children, pets, loved ones, sunsets, sunrises, full moon and stars. Oh, it's so abundant, is it not? For my breath. For friends who fit like the pieces of a weird jigsaw puzzle. For breathing, for cats, to be able to walk, you bet. For toes, for awareness, for the ability to be grateful. Gratitude arises for the fact of being born, or so it seems. This community, gratitude for existence, for every single experience of being alive, for dark, cold nights, for what is here before the stories. Gratitude appears in my life for the body that works on its own. Beautiful. For the body that works on its own, that is breathed by the universe, that appears to be born, and it is informed by the unborn. Beautiful. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. I love that blending of voices and just having that moment together to create something like this. Okay. Now, I want to say something about gratitude for teachers. There's a photograph there of me with Ruth Dennison. So in my lifetime, I've had the great good fortune to have two main teachers. One of them is Ruth Dennison, pictured here with her cane. She's got her hand up like this. She's telling me something, and I am intently listening to what she had to say. Now, Ruth Dennison appeared in my life right when I was overwhelmed with the longing for an elder woman teacher to appear in my life and show me the way to walk this path. Here she came, a Buddhist teacher of Vipassana meditation. Now let's see if I can, yes. And in this photograph here, this is at the end. Can you see this photograph where Ruth has her hand on my head? Yes, okay. This is the end of a 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat. And you can see I think I'm crying there. My nose is red. And she has her hand on my head, blessing me at the end of this long retreat. Now, just after this picture was taken, I am quite certain that my forehead went to the floor, and most likely I did a full prostration. Why? Because some people would say, oh, I would never bow down to another person. That's not right. But in my case, what I was doing was bowing because my head and my heart wanted to be in alignment with the ground, or you may say the ground of being. So a natural gesture was to go completely down. Now, Ruth Dennison, coming from this Vipassana tradition, she was in the lineage of Ubakin. She allowed people to bow this way before her, but she also bowed to you. So she would get down also, and together would do full prostration to the Buddha, to an image of the Buddha. Oh, I just think of what great good fortune that that teacher came to me, because what she gave me um, was the Dharma. I did not have that language. I did not have the understanding of the Dharma. And she gave me that. What a precious gift. To this day, she's passed on to the beyond, but my heart is radiant with gratitude for that teacher. She was a lay teacher for lay people. So you didn't have to go join the monastic order to get the most profound teachings of the Buddha through her. Now, in 1993, I met Joel. And I recognized Joel immediately as a truth talker. He was telling it, he was saying it, he was radiating it, and immediately I was there with him. 1993, in the fall of the year. Teachers like Joel and Ruth Denison are teachers who align their lives with being of service to spiritual practitioners. That's what they're doing. Joel, you know, why did Joel create all of this here? He could have done anything. I've often thought of this. Gosh, Joel, he could be out living in the Caribbean. He could be out making movies, doing all this stuff. What did he choose? To be here with us and to give us the teachings that were pouring through him. That whole audio archives, it's absolutely phenomenal. What a gift. What a gift. These teachers are always on in every way. They're teaching it by their very presence, and everything around them they are using in the service of awakening. They give their attention, their energy, their daily life to alleviate suffering in the world. We mustn't overlook that. We get all wrapped up in our story of I, and these teachers are just magnificent reminders of selfless service, selflessness. It's a natural arising for them. It's not as though, you know, they have to, you know, work hard at it. It's like coming through them, coming through them. Now, Joel has never been one to encourage anyone to give gratitude to him. Um, you know, we do a bow, but it's never for Joel. At least that's what he thinks. I have bowed to Joel many times. And so I just want to take a moment right now to do a bow for Joel, because, my friends, I would not be sitting here talking to you today if it were not for Joel. This is true in my life story. Okay, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you here at the Center for Sacred Sciences, would not exist if Joel had not created this. And I know Joel would be saying, oh, we all created together. Okay, I just want to give that gift of gratitude to my teacher, Joel, in this very slow meeting of the hands. Yes, please join me if you feel so moved. To Joel, thank you. Thank you, Joel. Thank you for the Center for Sacred Sciences. The great good fortune. The great good fortune. So many people that appear in the world have not had that touch of the Dharma or of the teachings. And to actually have more than one teacher come together in my life, I thank my lucky stars.
Can I add
Yes,
something
Joel.
here?
Oh, is Joel here?
Yes.
Yeah.
I I I accept that,
Yeah.
but I must pass it on because the reason I am here and the reason I've done everything I've done stems from, first of all, my teacher, Franklin Merrill Wolf, and then his student, who became my student, Andrea Pucci, who's here. And Franklin has moved on. He's no longer with us. Uh, but when after my awakening, I had no intention of being a teacher whatsoever. It did not appeal to me. I couldn't imagine how you could possibly teach anything. There was nothing to teach. And I ended up spending a year and a half at his place in the high Sierras. Uh, he had a little tiny community, his house and the houses of a few of his students. And he was very old. He was in his late 90s or mid 90s. And Andrea was his nurse, caregiver, student, companion, everything, you know. So I spent a year and a half there. And I did have this one impulse to write this spiritual autobiography, Naked Through the Gate. And that really came as an impulse. And it was like, okay, I'll write that and I'll discharge my duty right there. I'll send that out into the world. If anybody benefits from it, great. Not, but I'm going to stay in Lone Pine. I love the high Sierras there, and just bliss out. And then being with Dr. Wolf, Yogi, we called him. I realized that you could teach. It was possible to teach this. And that it was beneficial. I mean, I could see that his teachings really were helpful to other people. And then particularly Andrea, who she was the student of his that I spent the most time with. And she's the first one who recognized that something had happened to me. I was living in a little cottage, a little cabin, and not too far from the main house where she and Dr. Wolf lived. And one evening she came down, she said, okay, I know something's going on. You tell me what happened now. So she started dragging teachings out of me, and she got me to interpret for Dr. Wolf because he was old and he had all these visitors come and they want to talk to him. And he couldn't really sustain like 2 or 3 hour conversations alone. So I would sit with him and whoever came, and I would always answer in his teachings. I wouldn't give him my teachings, but they would ask him questions and I would explain an answer. And then they'd look over at him and say, is that true? And he, well, yes, that's true. So this is the way we operate. And this is the way I became a teacher. So I didn't choose to be a teacher. You're wrong. I didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice at all. It just, the universe called. I had no reason to say no. And then even beyond that, I met Amit Goswami and his wife Maggie came down to meet Dr. Wolf, not to meet me. And I happened to be there. And then I don't know if Andrea told them about me or they began to suspect something. They became my first formal students. Amit's, comes from India and he has a Hindu background. And he wanted to have, a little ceremony and have diksha and the whole thing. So we concocted something. And so anyway, I want to pass on your bow to Yogi and to Andrea, who was also here out there somewhere. I saw her face in the gallery view. So if you will want to join me for that, we can pass it on back.
Thank you for that, Joel.
There she is. You can blame it all on her.
Andrea.
So I would like to add to what Joel just spoke that it is said exactly what you both said. It is said in the teachings that the teacher who is before you, giving their body, speech, and mind, is more precious than the Buddha.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are appearing in person,
Mm-hmm.
in all time and space of all the possible causes and conditions arising for the moment to explode into this miracle of teaching, teacher, student. That is the holy Dharma in motion. And there's no greater miracle than that.
Beautiful.
And so, on some level, it's no problem for us to bow to the feet of our teachers because we are them and they are us.
Yeah.
There is this line of loving truth just pouring through the universe. And so for us, it's not about self or other. It's just the dance of truth and love. So I bow to all. Thank you, Joel, Mary Song, everyone.
Thank you.
CSS.
Notice the gratitude just permeating right now. I can feel it, the energy of it. It's beautiful.
Mary Song.
Yes.
This is Todd.
Oh, hi, Todd. There you are.
Hey, been kind of enjoying this. Very nice today.
Yeah.
Wonderful to hear you and everyone. I wanted to share a little bit. This whole idea of discovering that life is a gift is something which I found on my path a number of times. And rather than having this constant need for something more, when this happens, when we realize it's all a gift, we discover how much of our life we've been taking for granted. And taking life for granted is maybe the most horrible sin because it brings such suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered this a lot on my path only through the fact that I was paying attention because I was suffering so much.
Yeah.
So the little things that we constantly overlook in our life, it's like they've become caricatures of themselves in our mind, and we don't see them for what they truly are.
Mm-hmm.
For me, although this is very simple for a lot of folks, for me, it took a lot of deaths of loved ones. Every 2 years, for about 12 years, someone I loved died. And fortunately, during that time, I was attending CSS, and Joel pulled me through it.
What
He
year
really did pull me through it.
What year did you arrive at CSS?
I came in around 1993, around the time you did, I
Same
think.
time, okay.
I think I remember when you came. I think I remember the first time you showed up there.
It was a video Sunday.
Sitting in there at Fillmore Street.
Yes.
Yeah, so anyway, this, Joel was very helpful because I had some serious issues. I honestly believe to this day that with all of the things that were going on, I would have probably gone out and blown my brains out at some point. Truly, I really believe that because things just kind of went from bad to worse. It went on and on and on. And so, and I would come to Joel and I would tell him my sorrows, and he would give me little practices to do. Mm-hmm. Sweet little practices, little ways of looking at what's going on.
Can you tell us one of those little practices?
Well, he gave me many, many practices, but one of them that stands out in my mind was the one in which I was struggling to try to figure something out. Mm-hmm. And I came to him, and this was on a retreat. I came to him and he told me, okay, here's your practice. You're walking in the woods, you have a shovel. You find a spot and you think that something wonderful is there, you start digging. And I want you to keep digging and digging until you find what you're looking for. And so I didn't really know what to do with this teaching, but I went back to my room and I dug. I dug all night long. And I found all kinds of things. And it became the focus. It became my whole meditation was just to dig. And I thought of all the things that I wanted. And that was actually a transformative retreat for me. I began to realize that there's nothing that I'm going to find. And I would have moments, and we're practicing meditation, have these moments of stillness. And I began to recognize that the stillness offered something that nothing else seemed to offer. The stillness is here always. It doesn't leave. It doesn't go anywhere. One thing that I noticed towards the end of this period of deaths, in the last couple of years, I began to realize, just as the Buddha spoke of it, this world is on fire. It's burning up right now. And all we have is this moment alone. And I began to see that more and more and more. There's just this. And that in itself was transformative, extremely transformative for me. In one of my first talks at CSS, I remember sharing a story that was from a talk by Stephen Levine, which had really moved me in the midst of my pits of sorrow. And I'd like to share it with you. It's not very long, but it's kind of really reflects the heart of kind of what my path became and how it unfolded. So Stephen Levine was a Buddhist teacher that was very helpful to dying patients. And that's one reason that I really loved him, because, I was confronted with death all the time, and I really admired his ability to be able to be with dying patients the way that he was. So here's the story that he told. Someone who was troubled by the world the way it is with all of its calamities came to the Thai meditation master Ajahn Chah and asked him, in this world where everything is changing, where nothing remains the same, where hatred, loss, and grief are inherent, and everything is impermanent, how can there be any happiness in this world? How can there be any gratitude? How can we have appreciation? And the teacher, looking compassionately at this fellow, held up his drinking glass that had been given to him earlier in the morning. And he said, you see this goblet? For me, this glass, it's already broken. I enjoy it. I drink from it. Notice how the sun refracts through it in beautiful patterns. And when I tap it, it has a lovely ring. But when I put this glass on a shelf and the wind knocks it over, or my elbow brushes it off the table and it falls to the ground and shatters, I say, of course. When I understand that this glass is already broken, every moment with it becomes precious. And then in this talk, Stephen offered his take on Ajahn Chah's teaching. And he says, when we recognize that just like the glass, our body is already broken, that we are indeed already dead, then life becomes precious and we open to it just as it is, in the moment it is occurring. When we understand that all our loved ones are already dead, our children, our loved ones our friends, how precious they become. Even strangers can be seen as precious, even our enemies. How little fear can interpose, how little doubt can estrange us. When you live your life as though you're already dead, life takes on a new meaning. And he goes on. When we realize we are already dead, our priorities change, our heart opens, and our minds begin to clear of the fog of old pretenses and attachments. Seeing the mercilessness of our self-dishonesty, we begin to come gently into the light we share with all being. If we take each teaching, each loss, each gain, each fear, each joy, as it arises, and experience it fully, life becomes very workable. We are no longer a victim of life, and then we experience everything, even the loss of our dearest loved ones, as an opportunity for awakening. If our only spiritual practice were to live as though we were already dead, relating to all we meet, to all we do, as though it were our final moments in the world, what time would there be for old games and falsehoods or posturing?
Thank you. Beautiful. So, yeah, 1 minute to 1 o'clock. So that's a great time for us to bring this to a close. Let's just, savor this moment. If we just bring our hands up like this, maybe the hands are facing each other, but they're off to the side. And just notice that we're together. I mean, this is modern technology bringing us together through the screen. I'm grateful for that. I'm so grateful for that. I'm sitting here in my studio at home, you're all in your own homes, and somehow we're able to create this together. And so I feel so much gratitude for that. So let us savor that moment, this moment, and live in this moment. Even after we turn it off and walk away, we're still awake, aware, alert, alive, clear. And then very slowly we notice the magnetic pull between these two hands. Beautiful polarity, this beautiful duality, pulling slowly, babe, slow. There it goes, slowly. Not rushing to meet. Not rushing. In fact, they pull backwards. They pull back. Breathing in, breathing out. The hands continue now pulling in, searching for each other, getting closer. Fingertips beginning to touch. Palms coming together, thumbs together. Pulling down now to the heart space. And very slowly bowing the head forward. Great good fortune. Have a beautiful day, everybody.